They called me the perfect wife. I used to believe in love the way poets wrote about it, pure, unwavering, painful. When I married Daniel 4 years ago, it felt like a sunrise breaking through years of gray. He had a lopsided grin, eyes that sparkled with boyish charm, and a crooked kind of kindness that made me feel safe. But more than anything, he needed me. We met in college. I was studying to be a nurse. He was an economics major with a laugh that could make any room lighter. He said I grounded him. I said he made me feel seen. We weren't perfect, but we fit like puzzle pieces bent to match. 2 years into our marriage, his kidneys failed. Genetic, they said. Rare, rapid. I immediately got my kidney tissue tested, and it was a match. It felt like divine alignment, like I was meant to save him. The surgery was brutal, the recovery worse, but I never hesitated, not because I had to, but because I loved him, truly. Everyone called me a saint, the doctors, his family, even strangers. You saved his life, they said. But saints, I've learned, are rarely remembered after the miracle. You heal someone and disappear into the background, a ghost of their salvation. Back then, I still believed we were unbreakable. I told myself he'd get better, that we'd laugh again, that love was a test, and we'd pass it together. But I left out the lonely nights, the silence, the weight of healing a man who never said thank you, the ache I hid beneath my scar, the cold way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. I kept smiling. That's what perfect wives do. Daniel changed. Maybe it was the guilt, or maybe the kind of man who only takes and takes was always inside him, waiting. My love, once his salvation, became his burden. At first, it was small things. He pulled away when I reached for his hand. He started sleeping with his back to me. He'd sigh when I asked how he was feeling, as though my concern was an irritant, not care. His eyes dimmed around me. I'd catch him staring into space with a heaviness I couldn't reach. I thought it was trauma or post-surgery depression, something I could nurse back to light. But it wasn't just sadness, it was withdrawal. He stopped looking at me with softness. My kindness irritated him. When I kissed the scar on his side and whispered, "We made it," I saw him flinch. He began avoiding my touch altogether, brushing past me with an empty sort of politeness. I could see it in his eyes, the guilt rotting into resentment. He didn't want to feel like he owed me his life. He wanted to feel like a man again, desired, untouched. The tipping point came in the form of excuses. First, he started working late. Then came the business trips, weekend retreats. I'd wait up for him, sometimes until dawn, my phone in my hand, and worry gnawing at me like rats in the walls. And when he finally came home, he brought silence with him, the kind that sits between two people like a third body. When I tried to bridge the gap, plan dinners, offer getaways, even suggest therapy, he deflected, always with a dismissive, "You deserve better," or "You've already given me enough." He meant it to sound noble, but I knew better. He meant I want out. He wanted freedom from the weight of what I'd done for him. He wanted to rewrite the narrative, to be someone's desire, not someone's responsibility. And then there was her, Aubrey. I didn't know her name at first, just whispers, a scent, a smile that lingered on his lips too long after a text, a strand of blonde hair on his blazer that wasn't mine, laughter over the phone that stopped when I entered the room. The lies were pathetic, but I didn't confront him. I observed. I remember the exact moment I decided I would stop hoping. He came home late one evening, reeking of perfume and wine, a hickey poorly hidden by the collar of his shirt. He kissed me on the forehead out of habit, and I watched him go straight to the shower. No apology, no explanation, just entitlement. That night, lying beside the man who had my kidney inside his body, I stared at the ceiling and felt something inside me calcify. I began to count the things I had given up for him: my body, my health, my peace. I remembered the pain of surgery, the weeks of walking with my insides bruised, the fear when he spiked a fever, the tears I shed into his pillow while he slept. I gave him everything, and he repaid me with silence and secrets. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I smiled. I began to plan. It started with a name, Aubrey. Blonde, petite, 27, a marketing consultant with a penchant for drinking bourbon straight and liking every post Daniel made within 10 seconds. I found her name on a receipt tucked inside his laptop bag. 2 entrees, 3 drinks, 1 dessert split in the middle, signed with a childish little heart. After that, the trail opened like floodgates. I checked his texts while he slept. I studied his calendar. I followed his car once, in silence, driving 6 blocks behind until he pulled into a boutique hotel off Main and disappeared inside for 3 hours. He didn't lie creatively. He didn't bother to cover his tracks. That made it worse. It meant he didn't care whether I found out or not. One night, I called his phone while he was working late. A woman answered. Not flirtatious, not panicked, just calm. "Daniel's in the shower, can I take a message?" I hung up. I didn't cry. Instead, I walked to the mirror, stared at the reflection of a woman who traded her organ, her youth, her dignity, for a man who was now bathing in a hotel room with someone else. I traced the scar above my hip with cold fingers and whispered, "You gave him life, now take it back." That night, I began writing everything down, every detail, every lie, every moment of weakness. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming power. I stopped waiting up for him. I stopped asking where he'd been. I became warm, attentive, and so sweet it must have terrified him. He didn't know what to do with kindness anymore. I was the same woman, only quieter, more accommodating. I made his favorite meals. I packed his gym bag. I folded his clothes exactly how he liked them. I was building the mask. I started working longer shifts at the hospital too. The clinic had a private lab. I volunteered for overtime, gave myself a reason to research things, medications, toxins, surgical techniques. I made friends in the pharmaceutical storage wing, asked casual questions, gained quiet access, and all the while, Daniel thought he was winning. Every smile I gave him was a countdown. Revenge, I realized, is an art form. It isn't born out of rage. It's born from precision, patience, and the kind of cold clarity you only reach when love has completely rotted away. I didn't want to hurt Daniel. I wanted to ruin him. I wanted him to feel what I had felt. Not just pain, but confusion, paranoia, betrayal. The sensation of your insides being slowly taken from you by someone who says they love you. My plan took shape piece by piece, like the architecture of a slow-moving avalanche. I began with the small things, adjusting his medication slightly. Nothing harmful, just enough to make him feel tired, weak, off. He started missing meetings. He chalked it up to stress. I was right there beside him, offering soup, massages, sympathy, a nurse's touch. The perfect wife, once again. Then I started planting the seeds of doubt. I hinted at weird dreams he had, claimed he said odd things in his sleep, moved his keys, misplaced his phone, reset his alarm so he'd be late. Little things, things that made him question his own memory. He grew irritable, frustrated, told me he didn't feel like himself. I told him to rest, to trust me, to let me take care of him. And he did. Aubrey was still in the picture. I made sure of it. I never mentioned her, never accused him. I let the affair blossom like a weed, choking the last strands of his conscience. I even left a little envelope on his nightstand, photos I'd taken of him and her, kissing outside her car. No name, no note, just the evidence. He never spoke of it, but after that night, he started sleeping less, drinking more. He was spiraling, and I watched with the serenity of a saint. The final piece was elegant. I altered his hospital records, just slightly, enough to cause a scare, a flagged enzyme level, a possible sign of rejection. I made a fake referral to a specialist and handed it to him one morning with his coffee. He looked at me with wide eyes, the same way he had when he first got sick. It might be nothing, I said, brushing his hair back, but we should check. He went. The next day, I received a text. They want to do a biopsy. I'm scared. I replied, I'm here. We'll get through this. But we wouldn't. Not in the way he thought. Daniel came home the evening after his biopsy, looking pale and shaken. He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door and stood there like a man waiting for a verdict. I set the table for dinner. His favorite, garlic butter steak, mashed potatoes, a drizzle of balsamic glaze. He stared at the food but didn't eat. What if something's really wrong? He said. I smiled, pouring him a glass of wine. Then we'll handle it together. He looked up at me then, searching for the woman he once knew, the savior who gave him her kidney, the wife who had always stood beside him. She was still there, but now she wore a different kind of devotion, one that didn't forgive. Over the next few weeks, the symptoms worsened. Fatigue, insomnia, hallucinations even. One night, he woke up screaming, convinced someone was standing over him. Another night, he called 911 because he thought he was having a heart attack. The paramedics found nothing, just anxiety, they said. He was unraveling, and I was right there, comforting him through every tremor. In the mornings, I'd make him tea with the powdered root I'd been researching, harmless in small doses, toxic over time, just enough to keep his body guessing, his mind fraying. I watched as paranoia took root, like mold creeping through the walls of his sanity. He started seeing doctors, specialists. No one could find the cause. It could be psychological, one said. Another recommended a psychiatric evaluation. He balked at that. And through it all, I was the doting wife, soft-spoken, attentive, a constant in his decaying world. Aubrey disappeared. I made sure of that, too. One anonymous tip to her firm about workplace misconduct. Screenshots of flirtatious messages. A fabricated complaint from HR. She was put on suspension, pending investigation. She called Daniel hysterical. He blocked her. I watched him slowly fold in on himself, alone, isolated, sick, exactly the way I had felt. Daniel sat across from me, eyes sunken, hands trembling. It had been 3 months since the symptoms began, and he looked like a shell of the man I married. "Lena," he said, voice cracking, "I need to tell you something." I tilted my head, heart steady. "What is it?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "I cheated on you." I blinked, feigning surprise. "What?" "I'm sorry," he said, voice hoarse. "It was stupid. I didn't know how to deal with everything. You were so good to me, and I felt like I didn't deserve you. I needed to escape. I didn't even like her that much." I stared at him, letting the silence stretch, letting him choke on it. "I don't know what's happening to me," he said. "I think I'm dying, and I deserve it. I deserve all of it." I reached across the table and took his hand. "No, Daniel," I said softly. "You don't deserve to die." He looked at me with such gratitude, such desperation, and I could almost laugh. "But you do deserve the truth," I added. He frowned. "What do you mean?" I stood and walked to the kitchen, pulling a small box from the cupboard. Inside were vials, carefully labeled. I set it on the table. "I've been slowly poisoning you, not enough to kill you, just enough to make you doubt yourself, to make you feel weak, paranoid, useless, like I did." He stared at the box like it was a snake. "Why?" he whispered. "Because I gave you life," I said, voice cold, "and you turned it into a curse." He pushed back from the table, knocking over the chair. "You're insane." "No," I said calmly. "I'm a nurse. I'm meticulous, and now you'll understand what it's like to question everything, to live with a body that betrays you. He stumbled toward the door, but I was faster. I held up my phone, screen already recording. If you go to the police, this video goes viral. The whole world will see a man who cheated on the woman who gave him her kidney, who emotionally abused her while he played the victim. You won't recover from that. He collapsed onto the couch, shaking. "What do you want from me?" I smiled. "To suffer." Daniel didn't go to the police. He didn't tell a soul. He quit his job, started drinking, isolated himself. Word got around that he was unstable. Friends distanced themselves. His family stopped visiting. He became a ghost in his own life. I filed for divorce 6 months later. He didn't contest it. I got the house, the savings, even the car. He signed everything without argument. On the day the papers were finalized, he handed me a letter. His hands were shaking so hard he could barely hold the envelope. I didn't open it. I burned it in the fireplace. Daniel moved into a small apartment downtown. I never saw him again. Occasionally, I'd hear rumors that he'd been hospitalized, that he'd lost another job, that he spoke to shadows. But I didn't care. I was living again, free, whole, unapologetic. They used to call me the perfect wife. Now, they don't call me anything at all. And that's just how I like it.